Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, episode number 20. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey folks, this is Dean Vanier with Northwoods Common Sense, and you're listening to my favorite and most informative hunting podcast show on the internet, Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jay Scott, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, and we're psyched to be back once again. You know, this is so cool to be able to do this show once a week and talk to hunters and hunting personalities and industry experts that can help us enhance our hunting experiences. This is going to be a very cool episode. If you want to know everything there is to know about the Moultrie Total Management Game Camera System, today's the day that you want to listen. We got to talk to Boyd Barnett, and Boyd works for Moultrie. He has a podcast, and he knows everything there is to know about the Moultrie systems, the total game management, the feeders, and the cameras. Well, today we wanted to talk just cameras. So Boyd agreed to come on the show and share his intimate knowledge of the Moultrie game camera systems. And we're going to be able to dig in right here, right now with Boyd. Boyd, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Jay. Thank you for asking me to be on, and I appreciate the time.
Well, we appreciate it. And I got to say, we're fans of your podcast. Over
I appreciate that.
Moultrie, we've been listening in. We listened to the one with Mark Burnell. Is that correct?
Burnell, yeah.
I always find it interesting to find out how many athletes are hunters.
There are a lot. We got hooked up with our good friend Greg Blosh. Used to be defensive coordinator for the Redskins, Packers, and then I think for the Bears for a while as well. And he just shared all this knowledge of how many guys actually do hunt. Sometimes it's not, you know, they play that politically correct game where they can't all come out and say how big of hunters they really are. But man, the calls I get, and some of these guys, they're into it as much as we are. So I love to see that.
I like it when they speak out a little bit, so it lets them know that, you know, they're people too, and there's a huge hunting community. And I think knowing that there are athletes that we follow also hunt is pretty cool. Like,
yeah, I think just the fact that that these guys combine the things that we down here love the most, hunting and football together, can't beat it.
Right. Especially in the South, up in New England where I am, football is popular, but it's not anything close to what it is in the South.
Right.
I think what I've noticed too is that there are a great number of professional baseball pitchers that hunt.
Yes.
You notice that?
Yes, there are.
I'm not sure why. It just seems to be a coincidence, but many of the people that, like Jake Peavy, Mike Timlin, there's a long list. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, Chipper Jones has his own show.
Chipper Jones, Major League Bow Hunting or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'd like to get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, and we're talking the game camera. We're trying to figure out all the things that we need to know as hunters about using a game camera. And Moultrie is big into game camera systems and total game management.
Right.
And
Definitely.
I thought you guys would be a great guest to open this up.
I appreciate it. Let's shoot.
Okay.
What have you got?
Let's go with how did the game camera evolve? I mean, you've got guys and gals that are hunting
Right.
back in the, 20s, 30s, 40s. And hunting's been around forever, going back.
Definitely.
Back to before we were even had guns. I mean, we've been, right? I mean, we've been,
right.
It's been a survival mechanism for man forever.
Right.
And it's evolved with more and more technology. At what point was the game camera introduced into the hunting realm?
You're only looking at late 80s, early 90s. When the game camera first came around, because the first game cameras, honestly, were homebrew stuff. I mean, it was guys doing what they wanted to do in their garages. Pretty much the same way Dan Moultrie started Moultrie Feeders. He wanted a deer feeder. There wasn't one that he liked, so he built his own. And that's how the feeders came along. Once the game cameras started to evolve and Dan saw what a great tool they were going to be, he said, let's get into that. And so we started. We started off with our first camera was the 35 millimeter camera stuck into a housing, that triggered with motion.
Right.
Then what really changed game cameras and cameras in general were when digital cameras became affordable, really, for most people. And even then, those first digital cameras, if you look back, some of our first digital cameras were like $400 or $500. And they didn't do a whole lot compared to what we have now.
Right.
The fact that the technology has grown so great and the prices have come so far down, I can't really think of any industry that's had that kind of inverse correlation for features and price. The computers, the same price you paid for one 2 years ago is the same price you pay for one now. The prices really don't go down.
Correct.
But in game cameras, just that step up to take the technology and make it mainstream, make it affordable, which is one of the things we stress. We want to be, we're not super high end on the game cameras, pricing things out of the reach of the average guy. That's just not who we are. Our feeders aren't that way either. We want quality and we want the best price, but we're not going to sacrifice price for quality.
Right.
So now, just the fact that you can get a game camera that does all these great things for a price that is not crazy. It still, it'll sting if they happen to grow legs and walk off the tree, as we all know. But other than that, man, the things you can do with a game camera now are just phenomenal.
They truly are. And it's almost a little too complex. And I think that's what kind of sparked this episode, is that it seems like although they're getting better in technology and the price is coming down and everybody can pretty much afford one these days, the features, the options that you have on these things, it's like having a computer. And
it really is. And that it is the industry itself, I think, drives that. And also customers as well. They see the things that are available on other medium, smartphones and things like that. They see how far that has come, how great the cameras on smartphones are now. And it's one of those things, it's one of those escalations, you start here and you just have to do it to keep up, basically.
Right. So they started out with 35 millimeter cameras. And the idea was that if something moved or if there was a temperature change, it would trigger the camera to take a picture. Is that basically
right?
That's the format, correct?
Correct. You're right. Yeah, it was basically just a 35 millimeter camera and a housing.
Right.
It was crazy.
Why do we need game cameras to begin with?
Why?
Good question, right?
That is a good question, because I can say you don't need a game camera.
Right.
You don't have to have one. You can hunt just fine without one. People have done it for centuries.
Right.
What a game camera does let you do is use your time more wisely. It's gotten to be to the point, and you know this as well as I do, Jay, the time we have to do things that we like to do has shortened over the last, say, 100 years.
Yes.
Recreational time has been cut so much. People are working more. We're connected all the time. So when you do get a chance to get out, you want to enjoy it as much as you can. That's where game cameras come in. We're not guaranteeing you that because you see that buck on camera that you're going to see him while you're sitting out there, but at least you have the shot. You can tell exactly, you can start to pattern this buck. You'll know where his tendencies lie.
Right.
Now, all sorts of factors will disrupt a whitetail. We all know that. Turkeys, whitetail, all wild animals, extremely unpredictable when it comes to things like weather or just a wind change.
Right.
Things like that that are out of our control.
Yep.
But at least you have that starting point to know, I've seen him here on this day at this time consistently. That's when I'm going to use my limited time to be in that spot.
Right. And that is definitely the point of a game camera. It's taking a piece of man-made technology and it's trying to increase your odds of harvesting a deer that you would like to harvest. Although I have to say, I know that many of my friends have game cameras. They get a lot of pictures.
Right.
They don't get a lot of deer.
True.
Right? So it's not just the game camera. You have to be a talented hunter as well and know what to do with that picture, where to place the camera, and then use all the other skill sets that you need to hunt in order to be a successful harvest, basically.
Definitely. I mean, and we're lucky down here. Our season is very long. You know, archery season's already open. It's going to be open until the end of January.
Wow.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah.
I know in your part of the country and in others where we have these slotted seasons, there's very short time frames where you can go out. That's when it gets to be absolutely critical.
Right.
You know, our guys on the hit list, people think just because, you know, they hunt on a TV show, they don't have a lot of time. These guys have jobs. This is something they do, you know, for fun, basically.
Right.
And, you know, they're only in a spot 1 or 2 days, and then they have to go. And they have to go back to their life like we do.
Right.
So that's where it makes that the knowledge and that reconnaissance that you can get ahead of time that much more critical.
Right.
Again, we take it for granted down here. Our season is so long, but I know in other places you have to be very, very specific about what you want to do. What you want to do.
There's a very short window, and the deer population in many parts of the country isn't nearly as good, especially in the northern states. I mean, the deer population gets trimmed out, not by hunters necessarily, but by predation or bad winters. Right. So the herd gets thinned out pretty good. So if you didn't have a warmer climate where even with predation, you're not going to have as many deer. So you have a very short window to harvest a good buck or a deer, and you don't have that many deer to look at. So having the game camera system increases your odds somewhat, but it's still just a piece of the puzzle.
It is. Absolutely. Yep. That's why we say total game management is not just, to us, it's not just harvesting the animal. It's raising your herd up, getting that population up. Dan Moultrie is a huge proponent of this. He takes it personally. That the health and the size of his deer herd is something that he takes very seriously and very personally. And I think that's, you know, there's a lot to be learned from that. If everybody were to do that across the country, just think of how great our wildlife populations would be right now.
Right. Absolutely. It would be amazing. So the Moultrie has started out with a 35 millimeter camera. Was that the first piece that Moultrie came out with?
That was back in the early 90s, I believe, mid 90s when that was. And then, you know, we, to our credit, and I like to toot our own horn sometimes, we were really fast to get on the train for digital cameras when they became available. Okay. Because we saw that is where the future was going to lie. And honestly, I'll tell you, Jay, it doesn't, not too many months go by, and I will hear of somebody still running one of those 35 millimeter cameras.
Is that right? Oh, interesting.
They're still out there. They're still going. And the people that have them don't want to get rid of them. They keep them out there. Although we know it's getting harder and harder to find 35 millimeter film and somebody to develop it. But it's they're still out there.
It's kind of interesting because the 35 millimeter by itself is going away. I mean, it's just so to think that you would have a 35 millimeter game camera still kicking around that still works. Right. Is kind of amazing. And it is. It's cheaper, right, to take to get away from 35 millimeter cameras.
Oh, definitely. Digital cameras. Just think, I have a couple. I've been testing myself here for product development, putting these on time lapse, which it's one of my favorite features that we have. I'm getting 4,000, 5,000 images on an SD card. For my, so just think about how many rolls of film it would take to get that same output.
You can usually get 24 or so on a roll.
36,
36 on a roll of film.
Right.
Divided into 4,000.
You get one pesky squirrel in front of your camera, and 36 goes away in a hurry.
Right. You would more than spend. You'd probably buy 10 digital cameras by the time you get to the price point to take that many pictures with a 35 millimeter.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Sure.
So does Moultrie have like a research and development team that does nothing but try to figure out how to make these things better?
Definitely. We have a new product development team, which I'm fortunate enough to be a part of that. We test cameras religiously. All of our products, we test feeders. We have a property where we test everything. We also test things in-house. The testing around here, you just wouldn't believe how much time and effort and manpower goes into testing these products.
Interesting. See, it tells me that Moultrie's taking this seriously, and that this is not a lightweight game. Seems like, I mean, there are many competitors out there that are trying to keep up with the Moultries, from what I can tell, and it's Moultrie staying ahead of them, from what I can see.
Right, and some of those competitors, Jay, feeders and game cameras, game management is not their main business.
Right.
They got into this business as well. And if you don't have your whole heart into it, it's hard to have that success, at least in my opinion. But this is what we do, and we try to do this very well.
In Moultrie, the two big components of Moultrie are game feeders and game cameras.
Correct.
So if you're putting all your research dollars into those two components, for the most part, you're going to get a good quality product on the market at the end that's going to be better than the company that's just trying to get into it because they think they can get a piece of the market.
Sure.
Right.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the third piece of that is our food plot products.
Right.
Just not feeding the deer with the feeders, but also giving them nutrition through the food plots. Again, some places are luckier with land than others, that you have a lot of land to be able to put in these big food plots. Some, though, and as Dan has said to me many times, food plots don't have to be big. They can be very small.
Right.
It's just having that food source, especially in your part of the country, Jay, where the winters can be so brutal. To have a food source for these deer, if there's no other food source around, they're going to be on yours.
Right.
So that's a huge component of that total game management package.
And we spoke to Dr. Grant Woods from Growing Deer not too long ago, and he's a great guy and really knew his stuff about deer biology.
Right.
And what he said was, you don't have to be, if you're doing a food plot, you may not be the best food around at that time or all year round, but you have to have the best food in the neighborhood during deer season.
Exactly. Well put.
And that just resonated with us because what he was referencing is that you might have a soybean farmer that has thousands of acres next to you, but those things get harvested. And as your food plot is starting to grow and will be available at the time deer season rolls around, and that's gone, now you're the number one choice for the deer. And to have a balance of nutrition is huge because the deer know that.
Yeah, and people have, I may not be politically correct by saying it, but I have a saying that when the prettiest girl at the dance goes home, the next prettiest girl becomes the prettiest.
Right.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it works.
Yeah, and he referenced the old beer, not the beer analogy, the bear analogy, where you don't have to be the fastest guy in the woods. You just have to be faster than your friend.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Same kind of thing.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about strategies on where to place game cameras. Mm-hmm. Are there different places you should put them in different situations?
Absolutely. And a lot of it is going to depend on your local gaming laws. If feeders are legal, as they are down here, feeders are a great place to put your game camera because the animals are coming to that food source, and you're going to be able to see them at that food source. They're normally not going to be traveling very fast. They're going to stop, have a little something to eat for a while. You're going to get some good images of them there. Now, if you can't feed but you can do a food plot, putting a camera over a food plot is the next best thing. Then you kind of go down your progression. If your land has the only source of water for a while, that is also a great place to put them because animals need food, animals need water. Two things they're going to love. Then you get into specifics. If you have a specific spot you're going to put your tree stand, by all means, put a camera there. It just really depends on what you can do. Mock scrapes are great. These attractants that you can put on the ground, things like that'll make a deer stop in front of your camera. Those are going to be the best things to do. But again, it all depends on your local gaming laws. And I do have to stress that you check those out before you use any of those products. Okay.
All right. A very good tip. And that each state's a little different, and each county in each state might be a little different too, right?
Sure. Oh, definitely so.
So know your game laws before you start trying to figure this out.
Right.
All right. What I'd like to do is get into a little bit about the cameras that are on the market today at Moultrie, and see if we can go through some of the features and try to figure out which cameras are best for which people.
Sure.
You have a range, a price range, and each camera seems to be a little different in the features that they carry, which I would expect. But none of them have a price point that is out of reach for the most part. If I've got this correct, looking on the Moultrie site, you've got an entry point at $79.99, and the high end is $254.
Correct.
All of those prices seem to be what I would expect to pay for a good game camera anyway.
Right. And as I was mentioned before to you, Jay, we try very hard to keep the prices within that range.
Right.
We know our folks, the people that use Moultrie, they expect quality and they expect that reasonable price point, and that's what we're after. We're going to try and get, if at all possible, we're going to get you the best possible quality for the best possible price.
Right. Let's talk about some of the features. What do I need to know about megapixels?
Megapixels are good if you're going to blow things up poster size. Megapixels are important. If you want to zoom in on an image on your computer, megapixels are important. Other than that, they really don't serve a whole lot of purpose other than that kind of spec tech war, which we've kind of stepped away from. It's, image quality to me is much more important than a number on a box. If the image looks great and it does what you want it to do, to me that's more important than how many megapixels it says it does. Okay. Now, what does happen, the more megapixels you get, again, your images can be bigger, you can see finer detail, but unless you're really shooting for National Geographic, 8 or 10 megapixels is probably going to be enough for most folks. Okay. It looks like the range on the megapixels on any of the Moultrie goes from 5 to 10. Right. Most of them are 8. So if I'm the everyday average hunter and I just want to keep tabs on what deer are in the area, a 5 megapixel is plenty. It should be fine. Okay. But go ahead. Good. If I want to get up into, if I'm a photographer and I want to take good pictures and I want to blow things up into a higher quality image, I might want to go with a 10 megapixel. Is that correct? That is correct. Okay. And before we get too far, before I forget to mention this, you would be surprised how many people use game cameras that never fire a shot. Right. They don't care about harvesting an animal. They just want to see wildlife in its environment. Mm-hmm. And some of the pictures we get are absolutely breathtaking. People putting them on the side of a mountain with eagle's nests. I mean, things are just, it's incredible what these are used for. We have researchers all over the country and all over the world using game cameras, to monitor endangered species. Right. So it all kind of depends on what you're trying to get. I've used this analogy so many times. I do a couple of consumer shows every year, and people will come up to me and say, what's the best camera for me to get? And I always ask them, well, what do you want to use it for? Right. I don't want to sell you a Corvette if you need to haul a boat to the lake every weekend. That's right. That's exactly what's the best for one person is not necessarily the best for every person. So, you have to get into that use case. And that's one of the things I think we're going to try and focus on a little bit more to help people determine this is what I want my camera or feeder to do. Let's try to get them plugged in to what product is going to be best for them. Right. That's a very good thing. And that's why you have a range of different cameras to pick from. I can see, and definitely game cameras could do all kinds of things, especially if you have, say, for example, if you're a photographer, you have the only camera you have is the one that's in your hand. Correct. But you can't capture all different angles from all different aspects if you're just one person. You'd have to hire a team of photographers to take, like, let's say you're at a soccer game. If you put a camera on each corner of the field, you could cover a whole game and get all kinds of action shots depending on where that ball was traveling. That's not nature necessarily, but that's how. How many? There aren't cameras out there except for game cameras that I'm aware of or surveillance cameras that will trigger with a higher quality picture where you could actually use it to your advantage that way too. Definitely so.
So there's all kinds of little new ways to do that. It doesn't have to be about deer hunting. I mean, we're a little biased here because this is the Big Buck Registry, but
correct.
Right, but there are absolutely so many different ways. As a, I mean, you could be a bird watcher. You could be just a nature enthusiast that likes to capture pictures of other animals. This is a great way to do it.
Yeah, we at Moultrie are lucky, Jay, because we have a couple of our other brands that are under our umbrella. We have Wingscapes that does bird watching cameras.
I've seen that. I was researching some of the stuff on Moultrie. I saw that.
We do that, and now we've just launched our Trace surveillance line, which is meant just for home security and surveillance.
Right.
So it's using the same technology, adapting it to other markets, not necessarily just the hunters, but the people out that people love nature in all of its shapes and forms. And if we can help people with that, and with Trace, people using game cameras for surveillance and security, it was like, well, if they're using our product for that anyway, let's tailor that product a little bit more and help them out in that market.
Right. And most animals aren't going to be intimidated by a camera or an inanimate object that's just sitting there working internally. That's why these things work so great at a very rude element, right?
Yeah, that, and just to be able to see what the animals do when you're not there.
Yes.
That's a huge insight. I mean, researchers have been wanting to do this forever. People, you can go back to Jane Goodall with her work in Africa, trying to blend in, and being there and seeing what those animals were doing. If she would have had game cameras, to aid in her research, to see what they were doing without human interference.
Yes.
Again, what more are we going to learn about the animals all over the world because of this technology? Right.
Can you imagine? I mean, that's just a mind-blowing concept. Imagine Jane Goodall doing her research with game cameras.
Right.
She did all that without them. I mean, she took pictures, but she had to be there.
Exactly.
An animal in the presence of a human acts differently than in the presence of what appears to be nothing.
Exactly.
No question about
it. If anybody's ever turkey hunted or deer hunted, you'll know exactly the truth in those words.
Yep, that's right. How about trigger speed? What do I need to know about trigger speed?
Trigger speed comes into play when you want to capture animals that are moving quickly. That is on a trail. Now, if you go back to what I said before, if you're setting your camera in front of a feeder, trigger speed is not that important. If it's on a trail where they're moving and you want them to capture those fast-moving animals, then yes, trigger speed is definitely important.
Okay. Moultrie looks like it's ranging from less than a second up to 2 seconds for the lower end model. So if I want to take fast-moving photos or deer that are moving fast or animals that are moving quickly, I want the fastest possible trigger speed I can get.
Yes.
Okay.
I couldn't have said it better.
Okay. Flash type. This kind of confuses me a little bit sometimes because I don't really understand some of the technology. Internally, your research and development or your engineers are going to understand all this stuff, but I'm trying to put it into terms that we can all understand a little bit.
Sure.
Flash type, you've got low glow and no glow, and I think there used to be just regular flash, but I don't see that here anymore.
Right.
What's the difference between no glow, low glow, and flash?
It's a mouthful.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Game cameras, when they started, were just like film cameras. They're white flash, xenon bulbs. That's where game cameras started. Going back,
right.
35 millimeter cameras. You moved into the digital. We kept those xenon flashes. Well, then after a while, somebody developed, figured out, well, you can use infrared LEDs to give you images at night, and they're not that big white flash.
Right.
Well, of course, you lose color at night. That's just the way infrared works. You have to get into science and physics a little bit, which I've touched on a little bit on our show as well, and I think people just tune out at that point. But the infrared then evolved into making that signature red glow that you see when a regular IR camera goes off, to make that less and less. That's how we got into, no glow still has a little bit of that red glow.
Okay.
For low glow. No glow is what other people have called black flash, or there's like 15 other trademarked terms for the same technology.
Okay.
So no glow means you're not going to see that glow from the LEDs.
Gotcha.
Now what happens is your wavelength of light is compressed. It goes beyond what the human eye can see. Therefore, your flash distance, and I wish they'd come up with a better word, because flash really doesn't tell you what these things do.
Right.
You think flash, you think that white flash, but with no glow, you don't see the red glow, but your distance and your brightness are diminished.
Okay.
Right now, that's just the laws of physics. We're trying to appeal that one to a higher court, and so far I've been unsuccessful.
Gotcha. So really, the reason it's called flash type is because the original format was a light flash, a flash of light, and like on a camera. And now it's really more about illumination type. How are you going to make those deer appear in the picture at nighttime?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you'll see the back of our packaging, we've gone to, say 70-foot nighttime illumination. Because the term flash is still there, but it really is, like you say, it's illumination.
Okay. And that was my next question, was about night range, 50, 70, 80, 100. So it sounds like different cameras will reach out further with these types of flash, quote unquote, systems.
Yes. The things that are going to be low glow are going to have a greater flash distance, that greater range. I believe this right now the 880 and the panoramic 150 both reach out to about 100 feet of flash range. That's where, let me go ahead and say this because I have a feeling you may ask this next. Detection range, we also put on there on the boxes as well. To tell you, just really give you an estimate of how far the camera can physically detect movement or really, and at night it's a heat difference, not so much motion because there is no light. And people ask me, well, if it only detects to 50 feet, why do I need a 100-foot flash range? Well, the animal that trips off that photo may be at 50 feet, but you never know how far back his buddies are hanging out. So maybe a doe comes by and those big old bucks are hanging off way back in the background. You have that extra 50 feet to be able to illuminate things that you might not have seen otherwise.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Let's, what in the heck is motion freeze?
Motion freeze is very simply a faster shutter speed.
Okay.
Which, if we go back to the principles of photography that carry over to game cameras, point and shoots, doesn't matter, it's all the same. The faster the shutter, the less motion blur you're going to get, and that's what that is. It's to reduce that motion blur at night. So with motion freeze on, it's just a faster shutter speed.
Okay.
It's an internal hardware thing and a little bit of a software thing as well.
Okay. Because at night you have less light, and even though the technology are there to illuminate, you still, and this goes back to the 35 millimeter camera back in the shutter speed. The faster you can, the darker the image, the faster the shutter speed has to be in order to maintain clarity.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Now that, again, with motion freeze on, you're going to reduce your flash distance and your brightness because your shutter speed is faster.
Right.
You're letting less light into the sensor. Again, principles of photography, it still applies.
Gotcha. Okay. Battery life. This one's a big one.
Yes.
I see that battery life on these cameras range from 8,000 images up to 30,000 images. And what's interesting is that the low-end camera has which is, I think, the A5, right?
Right.
You call it the A5, has 8,000 images of battery life. Whereas the next one up, which is only a few bucks more, for $20 to $25 more, you can get one that has a battery life of 30,000, which is the highest of all the cameras.
Correct.
Tell me about the ranges. Why do they vary so much?
One of it depends on battery type. As much as people say they don't like C batteries, and I'm one that I do prefer the AA's just for many reasons. One, I have an almost 3-year-old. We have AA batteries everywhere.
Right.
So those you always have some. But weight, size of the camera can be reduced with those AA's. But those C batteries put out so much more battery life. And you go from the A5, which uses 4, okay? The next up, you go up to 6 C cells. Just the fact then you have that extra juice and extra battery management, it makes just a huge difference. It really does.
Gotcha. So you've got 4 C cells in the A5 up to 6 C cells in the D333, and that's pretty much consistent until you get into the 8 AA's.
Right.
Which is on the M880 and the M990. Okay.
Correct. Yeah,
Now,
the mini cams are going to use those double A's.
Okay.
That's how we get them so small. I actually had a customer call me up upset. He wanted to know why we didn't design cameras using those old 6-volt lantern batteries anymore.
Right. Good question.
I said, well, sir, one, it's a lot easier to find double A's these days than it is to find a 6-volt lantern battery if you're in a pinch. And two, I can't physically put one of those batteries in one of these mini cam cases.
Right.
If you can tell me how to fit, because these mini cams are basically just a hair bigger than one of those batteries.
Right.
And the weight savings is just phenomenal.
Right. These batteries are more readily available. Now, it looks like you also didn't go with the D batteries.
Yeah, our older cameras did use Ds. Again, talking about being big and heavy.
Yeah.
Just having the case big enough to hold D batteries made those cameras so big. And the industry has gone to smaller and smaller cameras. I don't know how much smaller we're going to get anytime soon. Any smaller, and we're going to be running on those button watch batteries. So, this is it's just a case of form and function kind of having to follow each other.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk about field of view. Now, it looks like most of them are at 50 degrees, but you've got the panoramic at 150. So
Correct.
If a full field of view is 360, why 50?
That is the widescreen view. That is, that's 16 by 9. That is the field of view. That's just, again, laws of physics and photography. That is all there is. You put three of those together, you get 150 degrees, which is what the panoramic 150 is. But also the D555IJ has a 90-degree field of view in that same 16 by 9. So we're doing a little bit of camera voodoo there with the lens and some of the processing there to get you a wider field of view in that same proportion.
Okay. Moving on to like video. Some of these cameras are capable of video, correct?
Yes, and that's one of my favorite modes by far.
Okay. Why is it your favorite?
Things with video, and especially the ones that we have video with sound. Video is great. You can actually see the movement of an animal, not just a still. I love that. I love being able to see how they move and what they're actually doing in their environment. I think that's very neat. The sound is great for a couple of things. We talked to Chris Parrish, who's our head of research and development over at Night and Hell Game Calls. Mm-hmm. And people have come to him and to me as well, talking about deer calls, grunt calls and things like that. So that, I've used one, it didn't work. So, well, did you practice? Did you listen? Do you know what a deer really sounds like to be able to practice? And they're like, well, no. How do I do that? If you have video with sound of an animal in its environment making its natural sounds, for deer it's great. For turkey, it's absolutely phenomenal. If you can pull up a video on your game camera and see and hear those turkey on your camera with that video with sound, it'll put goosebumps on you. You can't describe how awesome that is.
That's pretty cool. And I can visualize this and understand this because the way I learned to perfect my turkey calling was to sit out in the woods and listen to a hen call to tom turkeys.
Sure.
It was the best education I ever got.
Right.
I've listened to tapes and all that, but the best thing I could do was listening to the cadence and the rhythms of the hen turkey when they're trying to bring a tom in.
It's hard to beat the real thing.
Hard to beat the real thing. But if you can try to copy it as best you can, that'll make you sound more like a real turkey.
Right, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I see the videos of the big bucks making the scrapes,
yep.
And rubbing the branches. I mean, it's just seeing that. It's something you would never see yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be there when he's displaying that behavior. It's just probably not going to happen.
Right.
But to see it and remotely like that, it's one of those things. It's, what else are we missing out there in the great world that we've never seen before?
Right. And I think sound it could be an underutilized strategy when deer hunting. It's if you can make a sound like a deer is scraping, they're probably familiar with that sound. It could bring them in. It could make them come closer. And if you don't know what it sounds like,
Yeah, you're just shooting
Right.
wildly, throwing darts in the dark there.
Right. And it's kind of silly to think about that in some sense. Like, well, what does the sound of a deer making a scrape sound like? It's not a topic of conversation you're going to have every day with people.
Sure.
It's just a weird thing to talk about. But it would be a very cool thing to know how to do that, because I bet it would entice deer to come closer.
Definitely. And that's what it's all about.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Built-in viewer. Looks like a couple of them. I understand that part where you can look at some of the cameras or the shots you have there.
Also, we use that as a live aiming feature. When you put it in aim, you see exactly what that camera sees.
Gotcha.
That give the guesswork out of setting up a camera completely out. You can't underestimate how cool and how useful that feature really is when you're setting up a bunch of game cameras. Because I've done it myself. You think you've got it level. You think you've got it set up exactly where you want it. Go back and check all your images, and they're all slightly crooked.
Gotcha. Yep, that makes sense.
Happens to the best of us.
That's a good feature to have. Illuminite sensor. What's that?
The Illuminite sensor is the sensor inside the camera where the light comes in. That gets a ton of extra light in. That's where you get those super bright nighttime images that we've had for the last couple of years when we introduced that sensor. It's a bad phrase, but it's night and day to see even our old IR photos next to the ones now with the Illuminite. It's just, again, it's one of those things that once you have that feature, it's hard to go back.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like going from standard def to HD. Once you have HD, it's hard to go back.
Gotcha. So it's one of those things that the engineers have been working on, and they figured out how to make it better. And now that it's better, it's going to be mainstream for the most part from now on.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, just comparing ours to competitors, I get so spoiled with how bright and how clear our nighttime images are. Again, because the more light you have, the sharper the image.
Right.
Again, back to principles of photography. The more light you have, the better your image is going to be.
Gotcha. All right. Let's talk about what is plot stalker time lapse. What does that mean?
That is our time lapse mode. Time lapse is basically you set up the camera to fire at preset intervals, say once every minute. You can set it for how many hours you want it to do in the day. I use it, again, for testing camera. It's great. But say you have a great big food plot or an open field where you don't know exactly where the deer are coming in and out of that field, but you want to figure out where to set your tree stand. You set it on time-lapse mode, and that way the deer don't have to necessarily get in close enough to trigger it. It's going to go off regardless. So it stitches it into a movie. You watch a full day's activity in just a couple of minutes.
Okay. So
and if you've ever seen one of these where the deer come in to a field, you see where they come in, they'll hang around, they'll feed, and they'll go out. And if you consistently see them going in and out at those same points, you know where to put that stand.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is just time-lapse photography, and there's some advantages to just letting it roll instead of waiting for them to trigger it.
Exactly.
You might be at the wrong side of a field. You can see them all down at the other end of the field, like, well, I'm hunting the completely wrong spot, and you wouldn't have known that because no deer would trigger it. So,
yeah, and people have asked me how far does the camera see till there's something to stop it.
Right.
You can see to the horizon or the tree line. Whatever's out there, you're going to see that far back.
Right.
So, I mean, just to have this and to see how this works, it will really change how you set up and how you scout.
That's a great point. And I guess, I almost just skipped over this one, but this one's huge. The time lapse is a big, big advantage because you can put it in a field. You can watch the field for a whole day. And then, you can identify a deer, even if it's, a millimeter tall on your screen. You can tell a deer, and if it's moving. It's going to look different than anything else in the woods.
Correct.
And it'll tell you where to set up more accurately in that field. That's awesome.
Definitely.
That's something I never thought about, and I think that's going to be a huge tool to our listeners.
I hope so.
All right. Let's see. Delay. Now, this is different than trigger speed. Okay.
Correct.
Tell me about
that
delays.
Delay is physically how short of a time it takes a camera to get ready from taking one image to taking the next. So the shorter the delay, that means less time it takes for that camera to recover and get ready to take the next shot.
Okay. So
higher end cameras are going to have less of a delay.
The cheaper cameras will have a higher delay, and the more expensive cameras will have faster recovery time, so you can take more pictures.
That is correct.
Okay. And that could be key if you want a lot of pictures. You want to make sure you've got a camera that can reset quickly.
And it's also, you don't always need that low delay, even on the high-end cameras. A5, I think the minimum is 1 minute, and that's a great camera for putting over a feeder. Any of our cameras, if you put them over a feeder, you probably don't want a 5-second delay because you're going to get a ton of pictures of the same deer. You might want to step that up to a 30-second minute delay. That way you don't get quite as many of the same deer over and over and over.
Okay, gotcha. Widescreen versus not widescreen, 4x3. That's like television size, like old television versus new television.
Yes.
That's kind of straightforward. What about timestamp and date? That's just telling you what date the camera went off, the time.
Yeah, that's the little info strip at the bottom. Some of our higher-end cameras will also add barometric pressure, but you're going to always have date and time, the camera name. So if you have multiple cameras, you can remember, you pull the SD cards and bring them in, try to remember which one came from which camera. Then temperature, like I say, barometric pressure, that's all for patterning their movements.
Right.
People really get granular into this patterning when you can say, okay, at this day, it was this temperature, the pressure was this much, they didn't move at all.
Right.
If the temperature drops a little bit, pressure changes a little bit, they're all over my field.
Yep.
I'm going to watch the weather and know exactly when I want to be out there.
Yep. And it looks like it's recording moon phase, temperature, and barometric pressure. Those are the three things that, as hunters, you always try to keep some data on as to when you're seeing deer at certain spots. And whether it's, I guess the verdict is always out on whether these things really work, but those are the things that have always historically been something that as a hunter you want to pay attention to.
Definitely.
Okay. SD card capability. This one aspect of photography these days confuses me.
Okay.
You get there used to be SD cards had 1 gig and that was plenty, and now it looks like 32 is like the higher end, maybe even 64. I'm not sure. It seems like it's growing in size.
It is.
What do I need as a average hunter trying to do wildlife photography with game cameras? What do I need?
Again, it's going to go back to your usage case. Okay, all of our cameras will take up to a 32 gig SD card.
Okay.
You're probably going to say, why do I need something that big? One, if you're doing time lapse, you can have a lot of images in one day. If you're getting at a 30-second delay for 8 hours, that's a lot of photos. If you want to do video, videos can go up to a minute long. Video eats up space on SD cards.
Okay.
Now, if you're going to leave the camera alone for a long time, you're going to check it once a month, you don't want to run out of space halfway through.
Gotcha.
If you're in a high traffic area, you want to make sure there's plenty of room on that SD card in between the times you can go and check it.
Gotcha.
If you're checking it in your backyard or something, you don't need a huge, a 2 or 4 gig would be plenty. But we give as we add higher resolution photos and higher resolution video, it takes up space. And the fact that those larger capacity SD cards are now affordable gives us a way to get that technology out there when we couldn't have done it before.
Okay. So these cards have been evolving with the quality of the pictures and the videos that have evolved with it. So
Sure, definitely.
What should I expect to pay per gig these days?
That's a good question, and there's so many SD cards out there. You can get good deals on stuff all the time. A 2 or 4 gig card you could get for $10, $10 to $15.
Okay.
32 gig cards get more expensive. Again, if you'll notice, one of those things, maybe this is a good example of things that have gone down as in price as technology has gotten better. Used to be, SD cards and flash drives. If you had a 4 gig flash drive or SD card, that was a $50 item.
Right.
Now it's on the checkout, at the grocery store. It's $10 or less. So as technology evolves and then you get those higher capacities, the lower capacities get extremely less expensive. Just as an example, when was the last time you saw a 256 meg SD card of any kind?
Right. Don't see them anymore.
Any camera now will fill that in 2 shots.
Right.
So that's just, again, as the technology has gotten better, the storage space had to get better, and the battery life is going to be the next big thing. I think that's where if we see a good evolution in battery technology, that's when you're going to see a lot more features start to boom on the game camera side. Right now, we are, frankly, limited.
That's true. We're limited by the storage capacity. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you have everything comes with a 1-year warranty from what I can tell, which is very cool. What's the difference between the regular digital cameras and the mini cams?
Is physical size is the biggest thing, and all your mini cams are going to run on AA batteries.
Okay, and the features must be different on those mini cams, and or are they designed to match all the options on the infrareds?
All the mini cams are going to have 16:9 format videos and photos. The D series are. It's hard to give a blanket statement because the 555i does some really cool things, but it's not technically a mini cam.
Okay.
It's a lot smaller than our old cameras for sure, but it's more compact than it is mini.
Okay. So the mini cams are designed for size and to be less obvious in the field. Is that
definitely?
That's why they're there. Okay.
And if you've ever carried out, like I have, 3 or 4 or 5 cameras at one time in a bag, you'll appreciate the size and weight of these mini cams versus our old D-cell monster cams.
Gotcha. And it looks like they're selling pretty good. They're out of stock on your website, and it looks like these are brand new this year. Is that right? The mini cams?
Are.
Okay.
Well, the mini cams we actually started 2011 was the first year. The M80 was the first mini cam that we introduced, and Jay, to this day, that remains the best and fastest selling camera we've ever made.
No kidding.
And it is the camera that I use personally.
Oh, that's cool.
I still have one. I use it. That's the one I love. I keep one around. I also keep an M100 around because I love that camera as well.
Okay.
It's basically the same as the M80, but it added the colored view screen. So just these mini cams, they were the next big evolution for us.
Okay, so the M880 is your favorite camera right now. It's the mini cam. And
yes.
It seems to be very popular amongst everybody because they're hard to find.
We're doing our best. We make them as fast as we can.
Yeah.
They don't stay here long.
You got overtime happening in the factory as we speak.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Yep. All right. So what I'd like to do, Boyd, is just run down. We asked this question on the Big Buck Registry this morning. What's your biggest pet peeve about your game camera? And I'd like to just run down through some of the answers and see what Moultrie is doing to take on some of these pet peeves, if that's cool.
I'll answer the best of my ability of things that I can answer.
Okay. First one from Jeff McKee. It says they keep getting stolen and are expensive.
Expensive is a relative term.
Yep.
Again, I think I've just from talking to you, and if you've listened this far, you see that we offer a wide range of price points for cameras. Granted, like I said, anything that gets taken off a tree by somebody else is going to hurt no matter what the price is.
Right.
And the thing to deter theft, though, is we have integrated into the back of our cameras a loop for a master lock Python cable to go through that.
Okay.
Now, if you put one of those on a tree, again, somebody could always cut the tree down. If they're happen to be walking through the woods with a pair of industrial strength bolt cutters, they could probably get that as well. But if you're walking through the woods with a pair of industrial strength bolt cutters, you're up to no good anyway, and it's really hard to stop somebody. Same thing with cars. We have all of these alarms and theft deterrents on cars. Mm-hmm. Cars still get stolen.
Yep. Houses. I mean, if somebody wants to break it, steal it, get into your house, steal your car, they're going to do it. There's just no way. You can have good deterrents, but that's about it.
Right. We have a camera security box, which is a theft deterrent. People ask me, how do I protect my camera? Make sure it can't get stolen and can't get damaged by bears. I said, well, don't put it out.
Right.
You're not going to stop a bear. If you've ever tried, I would not recommend that. You just want to deter that, and our security box is that as a deterrent. As this old saying, we're just trying to keep an honest man honest.
Right. I think taking on a bear is always an interesting concept because it would be like the ultimate opponent if you like to be physical and
sure
fight. But ultimately, I've always decided against it when it came right down to it.
Just a couple of hints, though, in seriousness. That's one of those mini cams. The size really helps. They're a lot easier to conceal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice our new Moultrie camo for this year, that white oak camo blends into a tree very well.
Yep.
Also, think about, talking about placement. Most people will put their cameras, about 36 inches off the ground. That's perfect for catching deer, but that's also really in line of sight for a person. If you want to really conceal these a little bit better, think about moving them up and out of line of sight. Same thing with using that no glow technology where there is none of that telltale glow or that white flash. If security is an issue where you're putting your cameras out, those are good things to have. Think about the placement and think about going toward that no glow.
Gotcha. So maybe even bringing them up higher in a tree and angling them down somehow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that
now that'll cut out your flash distance.
Yep.
But it may still be there when you go get it.
Gotcha. That's cool. It takes pictures of leaves falling. That's from Ruben. Is there a way to stop little pictures or things that you don't want?
It's very hard. You play that sensitivity game. You want it to be sensitive enough to get small movements when you want them, but not others. It's really a trade-off. And if there is enough motion, sometimes, and that's something I've been talking to our engineers about, something I didn't understand, is the way these things work with the PIR sensors. Is that sometimes something can be on the edges of a frame and then dart in and out of it, and by the time the camera actually takes a picture, that object has moved, whether it be animal or whatever, but all you see is nothing. That's just one of those things. It's,
right.
If you come in and out just long enough to trigger it, but before it goes off, then it'll look like there was nothing there.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Rusty says, C batteries suck, AA or external preferred. So you guys have solved that already. I mean, you use some C batteries, but you've got AA alternatives. That's something that Moultrie's already addressed.
Sure, but you go back to those C batteries getting 30,000 images off 6 Cs. I mean, we've maximized those as much as we can.
Right.
Yeah, and we also now have the camera battery box, which is our own external battery source with a rechargeable 12-volt battery inside that sealed box. I use it right now for my one of my cameras as well. Right,
that's very cool. And that's a good point, is that if you're going to leave the camera out there for a long period of time and you aren't going to visit it very often and you want to not worry about battery life, that's a great way to do it.
It definitely is.
Right. Let's see. Slow trigger time and life of camera. Trigger time you've addressed. That's right. You have less than a second trigger time. That's not a big deal with the Moultries. Life of camera. How long do these things last in the woods?
Like I said, we still have 35 millimeter cameras going strong.
Gotcha.
Now, also some of our original digital cameras are still out. People still swear by them. Honestly, again, it's one of those cases where it's on a case-by-case basis. The elements play a big part in that. You put electronics outside in the elements for any length of time, honestly, we're asking for problems. You put anything electric outside, eventually the elements are going to get to it.
Yep.
Our conditions down here are a lot different than yours.
Right.
We get a lot of heat and a lot of humidity. You get single-digit or less temperatures and snow and ice where we don't get that.
Batteries do not like cold.
They do not, and that's really the biggest thing. Is people say, "Oh, my camera stopped working." No, your battery stopped working.
Right.
Battery technology, again, that's one of those things where there's so much room for improvement.
I agree. Battery technology could go a lot further. Let's see what else we've got. Richard would like to see a camera that live streams to your phone.
Check your local gaming laws for that one, sir.
Gotcha.
That is illegal in most states, and if you ever wanted to hunt a trophy whitetail, Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young would never certify that animal. Interesting.
I didn't know that. So it's kind of like a security camera that you would have Wi-Fi'd into your network.
Those two organizations completely frown upon the use of technology, period. It's only been recently where they've kind of allowed deer taken with the use of game cameras. If you admit that to them, that's up to you. But
right.
Anything live video like that is going to be a no-no. So you'll want to really think that think that through.
Yeah, I mean, all those institutions are kind of they're like the purist. They're purists.
They are purists. Right. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I understand that, but that's one of those things. Laws really get in the way sometimes of things we want to do.
Yep. Pics of the wind. I don't really know how you have a picture of the wind. It does be a blank.
That's something. Well, I will go ahead and address that because I failed to mention it before, and I've been guilty of this as well. Make sure you don't have any limbs in the field of view of your camera. And again, I'm talking about that peripheral view as well. Make sure, take a little handsaw out there with you. Make sure you have plenty of room where things are not getting in front of those cameras. Again, during the day, motion is what sets these things off. And any motion whatsoever, you run that risk of getting pictures of what we call, nothing.
Right. Night pics are really bright. What does that mean?
Well, our pictures are bright. The thing is, if you because you say the 880, Jay, has that 100-foot flash range.
Yep.
Don't put it 5 feet in front of something.
Right.
Everyone's saying you want to maximize your distance. Again, same thing. You take a flash picture of somebody 2 inches away from the camera, it's going to be blown out.
Right.
Same thing like that. Give it a little distance because they do reach so far. And some of these images I get are lit so well at night because people understand how to position these cameras. They're just phenomenal.
Right.
But that can happen if something is way too close to the camera.
Right. Everything has a reflective quality to it. So, and the closer you get, the more reflective it's going to be, and it'll just whiten your picture to the point where it's not pleasant to look at.
Exactly.
Yep. Let's see. Blurry pictures on an IR camera.
That's motion free. That's where motion freeze comes in.
Motion freeze, okay. And the flash, you've solved the flash problem, and that's it. It sounds like you guys got it covered. So great job.
All right, we can all go home today.
Exactly. Now, Boyd, before we let you go, tell us a little bit about your podcast and how that started.
I started the Moultrie Total Game Management podcast a couple of years ago, shortly after I started here at Moultrie, just as a way to interact with our friends that use our product. We didn't really have a way to communicate, and now I'm on Twitter and Facebook all the time as well. I love to interact with the people that use our products. I mean, I don't call them customers; I call them friends because they are our friends. They give us feedback. They let us know when we're doing stuff right. They let us know when we're doing things wrong. And that's just a way to kind of interact. We do news supplied to us. We have a sister company here, GrandviewOutdoors.com. They supply us our news. We go through our website as well as some of our sister companies and bring you some of the deals, the internet specials they've got going on that week. And also try to surround myself with people that know a lot more about this stuff than I do, find experts. And that's where we come in with our interviews. We've interviewed people all from Dan Moultrie to Bobby Murray, who won the very first Bassmaster Classic, and he's on our staff with our fishing division. Chris Parrish, like I mentioned, head of R&D and multiple national champion turkey caller. Just getting all these experts together and just listen to what they have to say in this kind of format. It's one of the great things, Jay, and I know you wouldn't be doing your podcast if you didn't love it as well. Right.
Yeah. No, we absolutely love talking to people that know more about hunting than we do. I mean, it's just so interesting to hear what people are doing, and we're just trying to spread the word and help people get the same knowledge that we get when we talk to these great people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do people reach you, and how do they find your podcast, and where should they go to buy these products?
Well, first off, we have our website, MoultrieFeeders.com. There'll be a link to the podcast, and all of our products there are the podcast website is moultriepodcast.podbean.com. We're also on iTunes. Just search for Moultrie, and we'll pop right up there. Or if you ever want to get in touch with me direct, just shoot me an email, moultriepodcast@gmail.com. And we're also on Facebook and Twitter. At Moultrie Products is Facebook, and we're at Moultrie Feeders on Twitter.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Boyd. We appreciate your time. Any parting thoughts?
No, I mean, this has been a lot of fun, Jay. Anytime you want me back, if you get a list of questions or just one that you need help with, don't be shy and just ask away. I'll love to come back anytime I can.
That would be awesome. All right, that was very cool. Thank you again to Boyd Barnett for joining us on the show and sharing all his knowledge about the Moultrie systems. And if you would like to reach out to us, or if you have any other questions about game cameras, or if you want us to reach out to Boyd for you, you can always shoot us an email, j@bigbuckregistry.com. Our website is bigbuckregistry.com. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. Our Twitter site is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. And we have a phone number, and that is 724-613-2825 if you ever have to call in with any kind of feedback, or if you want to tell us about a hunt or anything like that. And I know everybody must be starting to have some success in the field. I know did a little rut check on the Big Buck Registry Facebook page. Got a lot of responses there. So go check us out there. Tell us what's going on out there in your neck of the woods. And we will see you next time right here on the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.